Shalom everyone, and today we're studying Parashat Shemini, the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, chapter 9, verse 1. Vayi bayom hashmini, and it was on the 8th day. Now, the question we have, why do you start the Parashah saying it was the 8th day? Because you read the commentaries everywhere, it is known that that day was the first day of the month of Nisan, the first month, the month of Aries. So why do we need to say on the 8th day? So, of course, there's an explanation that when they built the tabernacle, 7 days before, for 7 days, they were training themselves of putting it together and setting it apart. And on the 8th day, they did, it was a dry run before, now it was the real activation of the tabernacle. So why to insist calling it the 8th day, instead of saying it was on the first day of the first month, which is even more respectable, because the first day of the first month, this is a celebration that it's a year after they started the journey towards freedom, which means if we read the book of Exodus, chapter 12, in the beginning of the chapter, it speaks about the blessing of the new moon just exactly a year earlier. This is when the counting towards redemption started. From that day, they counted 10 days, and then on the 10th day, they took the lamb, each household, and then on the 15th, there was the, more correct, on the 14th twilight, they slaughtered the lamb, they ate it with bitter herbs and the matzah, and the next day, on the full moon of Aries, they left Egypt. So it's an amazing context that it's a year later and now they are building the temple. No, the 8th day. Why the 8th day? So we spoke about it a few times. And the idea about the number 8 is very clear. The message is very clear whenever it appears. It is about connecting to the world beyond, connecting to the dimension beyond. If we're talking about the perception of a normal human being, you have 7 dimensions, which means 7 directions of thinking. You can think about moving to the right or to the left, to the front or to the back. This is 4. Up and down, together this is 6, and myself is 7. Is there any other direction? Not in the logical sense, but there is another dimension, which is getting out of the box, because what I just described is a box. A box has the right side, the left side, front and the back, top and bottom, and myself. This is 7. Getting out of the box. This is connecting to number 8. And in Hebrew, 8, shmone, same letters as neshama, a soul. So, can we see the soul? No. Does that mean there's no soul? Of course there's a soul. But science says we could not measure the soul. Science is a few hundred years old, the way we know it. And how long is it that science can measure radio waves? That's 100 and something years ago. And what about radioactivity? That's maybe a century. Okay, so was there radio before science recognized radio? Of course it was. Was there subatomic particles and radioactivity before science found a way to measure it? Of course there was. But the fact that science cannot measure it does not mean it doesn't exist. Okay, and that's a pretty kind of a hubris to say, oh, we didn't prove it, so it doesn't exist. Science is rushing towards revealing more and more secrets of the universe. In some areas in physics, we double the amount of information every 2 years. You know what does it mean? And today we know half of what we're going to know in 2 years from now. And we know a quarter of what we're going to know 4 years from now. And an eighth of what we're going to know 6 years from now. And so on, you can imagine that. So how much do we really know? Very little, because there's so much discovered, and we're just in the beginning of the journey. But now the most important thing. For some people, you don't need scientific approval that there is a soul or there is the world beyond. And that these are the people we're talking to. So on the 8th day, Moses calls Aaron, his sons, and the elders of Israel. That's Leviticus chapter 9, verse 1. And then he says as follows, Vayomer el Aaron, kach lecha eged b'makar. He gives some instructions what should be done in the day of the dedication of the tabernacle. And it starts with by Aaron taking a calf for a sin offering. Okay, what does that mean? We understand that we are still a few months after the sin of the golden calf. And that means that Aaron, who did not manage to stop this golden calf, he tried to manipulate those people who wanted to do the golden calf, but still he did not manage to stop it. He was with the people. Moses was on the mount, as everybody remembers, and Joshua was also on the mount waiting for Moses to come back. So Aaron, who was in charge, it was his problem and his fault, him and the rest of the nation. So the first thing they did with establishing the tabernacle was to bring an offering of a calf to repair, atone, remove, cleanse the sin of the golden calf. And this is something that is very important. It's another concept that we should understand. The ability that we have to remove whatever is negative that we generated, we created. This is a very important concept, that this concept runs along the whole book of Leviticus, which is we are human beings. We're very good in making mistakes, in creating mess, chaos, defiling, desecrating whatever that is holy. However, we have the ability, as we have the ability to destroy, we have the ability to fix and correct. And being in a physical universe, in a physical dimension, in this cage of 7 dimensions, state of mind, logic, still we have to delve into the world beyond in order to remove guilt, remove shame, remove blockage, all what gets us stuck, because this is the purpose of the creation. The purpose of the creation is not to be perfect, but to perfect. The purpose of the creation is not never making mistakes, because we do make mistakes. We're born into a world that is impossible to keep it perfect. So being able to overcome the imperfections and the mistakes, this is a very important foundation in the spiritual journey of every human being. If you don't believe, you don't have the faith, as what our sages are teaching us, that more than a calf wants the milk, his mother cow wants to feed him the milk, which means more than we want God's light, he wants to give us his light, and therefore he provides us with all the means to atone, cleanse, repent, overcome, all the tools to get ourselves free from the dungeon of the 5 senses cage, which we are imprisoned in. This is basically a major foundation. Now, so we know that the sin of the golden calf was horrible. When you read the story, it looks like this is unforgivable, impossible. How could somebody do something so horrible after all the miracles and then making that sin? And the sages, our sages are saying, even we have to understand it in some way, the sin of the golden calf had to happen. They were not so sure, some of them, some of the Tanaim, that we had a free will about it. Why? That was to show that even though someone can make a mistake so huge, that can be atoned and cleansed. So nobody can say, because one of the most powerful blockages people have is, what can I do? I messed up big time. I don't think that there is a atonement or any way to repent or cleanse all the trouble that I created. And the answer is, if the sin of the golden calf can be atoned, whatever you did can be atoned to. So don't even listen to the dark side, your own dark side, who says, oh, other people's dark side, saying, oh, your crime is, it's like, it's so horrible, you have no hope whatsoever. Giving up hope is basically the most horrible thing a person can make to himself. Religiously, or we're talking about the level of faith, this is basically a death sentence. And we know from scientific research that a lot of people that found with any kind of terminal disease, that could be proven that not many years earlier, that person came to the idea of like, I'm hopeless. It will never be better because I messed up so much. There's no hope. Giving up hope is the worst thing, the worst basically felony a person can do, because this is denying what Parashat Shemini is teaching us. Doesn't matter what you've done. You human being, you fell, now get up. But I don't see any hope. Yes, you do not see any hope as long as you're stuck in your logic, in that cage, in that box that you're locked in. So how can we unlock ourselves? And here comes the answer. And we see Moses on the 6th verse is saying, ויאמר משה, זה הדבר אשר ציווה אדוני תעשו, וירא עליכם כבוד אדוני. And he says, this is what you're going to, what that God ordered for us to do, and the glory of God will be seen to you. Which is not just that it is atonement, cleansing, and forgiveness, you're going to be able to see God's glory. What does it mean? We're talking about, when we're saying about God's glory, we're talking about revelation in a prophetic level, which means coming back to what we lost on Mount Sinai, because Mount Sinai revelation, that was a prophetic revelation of a whole nation. Everyone, man, woman, child, everyone experienced the glory of the revelation. This is not like somebody said, I had a revelation, I went to a cave and I meditated over there for 40 days and 40 nights, and I brought you a message from God. I had an angel revealed to me. I had a dream and I want to share it with you. I was ordered to share it with you. Here it is, a situation in which all the Israelites on Mount Sinai, almost 3 million people probably, experienced that revelation. Now everybody almost participated in basically losing that status. And now Moses is saying, you can regain that prophetic status today. And then the story goes on. And it tells us that they did exactly what They were instructed. Okay? And they followed exactly the orders. And then we come to chapter 9 in Leviticus verse 24. Vatetse esh milifnei Adonai, and fire came from in front of God. Vatochal al mizbeach, and that fire consumed whatever was on the altar. Et haolav, et chalavim, the different offerings that were there. Vayar kol ha'am, and the whole nation saw. The whole nation perceived that supernatural phenomena, that was a fire from God. It was not a physical fire, which is basically a very intense chemical reaction. Okay? So everybody could see that, as it says, the whole nation. It's very, very clear the way it says. Vayaronu, and they rejoiced, vayiplu al pnehem, and they fell on the ground, which is basically a very common thing the Zohar explains for prophetic revelation. Usually when we read about the later on great prophets like Isaiah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel and so on, usually when they were prophesying, when they had that high level of prophecy, they were not able to stand. Science is trying to explain that stuff in the last few decades. And last week I was bombarded with scientific experiments that came to me through all kinds of messages talking about that there is a scientific basically definition of how does that happen, which means when a human being has what we call a prophetic experience, which means when a human being connects to the world beyond, there is a shutdown of that part of the brain that is responsible for the flow of information coming from the senses, which means those parts of the brain responsible for perceiving or analysis of the signals coming from the eyes, from the ears, from the nose, all of these senses, they are shut down. And when they are shut down, when that physical sense of me, my body, my existence in a body separated from the rest of the world, this is the scientific description, which means what is happening all the time, that part of the brain that is all the time busy defining from definition, boundaries. This is me, this is the outside of me. This is the box that's outside the box. I can perceive, get, understand, feel inside the box. What is outside the box is not me. When that part of the brain is shut down, basically, one symptom is you can't stand, because your sense of direction of, up and down, right and left is lost. You don't have those signals coming in, so you can't stand anymore. You have to fall down. So this is something that some scientists call it, this is like like a seizure, epileptic seizure. But we know some other scientists who are into that research are saying, show me somebody who is sick with epileptic seizures, revealing prophecy like the book of Isaiah. So that's not exactly a seizure, but the syndrome is similar. And what do we get instead? We get instead another state of consciousness, which is being one with the greater one, which means when we go to the foundation of the faith, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, God is one. which means this is a meditation that at least twice a day you need to recite, which means elevating ourselves above the fractured universe that is busy all the time with boundaries. You know, something you teach a little kid, this is mine, this is ours, this is not ours. We can take it, we cannot take it. That belongs to the neighbors, that belongs to somebody else. No, and the child is like, no, everything is mine. Because the child cannot see something outside of the me. Everything is me. Later on, we start to define that there is outside of me and there is me. And the rest of our lives is spent over there. But the moment you reach the greater one, which means feeling one with the universe, scientific experiments all over the world, and it's like, it's coming from different universities around the world, we realize that the human brain is capable of reaching to a higher place in which you see that the frequency of the brain waves, which is usually around 12, 13, 14, something like this, hertz, that's when we are always busy defining. We are not realizing we're doing it all the time, but this is basically part of our, all the time checking the box. And we do that, the scientists can see our brain do it constantly. However, when somebody is a trained meditator, which means he knows how to lift himself to the beyond, then we can see that not just that those areas in the brain are shut down, the other parts of the brain are starting to talk to each other, and there's much more like awakeness in the brain, and even the brain waves can jump higher to the 30s and 40s hertz. And that's when a person feels what we call a religious experience. And the whole nation saw Vayaronu, and they rejoiced. And the word rejoice means everybody, the way it's written over here, everybody had this epiphany of being one with a greater one, a real feeling of oneness with the universe. When a person reaches that place, you can achieve one very important goal: true fulfillment. So we're not here just to be happy. We're here to experience that experience of one. And therefore, if you go into the basic idea of Judaism, one of them is that saying the Shema Israel twice a day, at least, with that idea that I'm unifying the whole world into one. I declare that the world is really one, that God and us, me and you. And as the Zohar is saying, before you say the Shema Israel, you have, first of all, to think that you are one with all other human beings that are basically different parts of Adam, because Adam was composed of all human souls. Every human soul was part of Adam. And if you can feel one with all human souls, then you can feel how those human souls are one with the Creator. Now, how can you measure something like this scientifically? Because the moment you use the word measurement, you're talking about limitation, separation. This is one and this is two. This is high and this is low. This is in that area and that's above the area. Okay? When we're talking about one, there is one. And science finally arrived to acknowledge that one, maybe 100 years ago, around that time, when science realized that the whole universe, in one point in time, just before the Big Bang, the whole universe was one. No right and left, no up and down, no yesterday and tomorrow. Everything was one in one point, which means we're starting with the one, the same way as the Kabbalists taught for millennia, that the whole universe, if the whole universe was one, in certain dimension, it is still one. And our human being, our job as human beings is to escape the dungeon of the box and to connect to that one. And that is basically the definition of prophetic experience. The only way we can feel free is not when we have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. It's not when we simply keep a very, very strict diet and exercises so we can be physically fit. Sooner or later, the consciousness, the idea that we are imprisoned in a very limited cell that is called consciousness, human physical consciousness. And our calling is to escape from that place. And that is basically the notion that we can see it happening from a few weeks before when we read the Parashah of the end of the book of Exodus and the beginning of the book of Leviticus, all about elevation above the consciousness of limitation, fragmentation, separation, definitions, all what is really logical and comfortable and secure and right, but it's not. Why is it not right? Yes, there's mine and yours, and you cannot take what belongs to me without asking for my permission. You have to respect the boundaries of this world. When you drive on a highway, you have to follow the signs which say over here you can drive not faster than so, and over here these are the speed limits and so on and so forth. Yes, you have. However, and that's something that I explain many times, a human being is like an airplane. An airplane has two means of transportation. One is wheels and the other one is wings. God forbid that an airplane will try to use wheels to reach its destination. That will be a terrible disaster. The purpose of the wheels is somehow to support the airplane till liftoff. The purpose of human logic is to understand reality, and then to understand that reality has limitations, and then to start to understand logically through study that is outside reality. How do we get to liftoff? How do we get to liftoff? Just using logic, it's kind of troublesome, it's hard. And therefore, there is there's an amazing explanation of the Opti Rebbe, and he explained it on this way, on Parashat Shemini. Why does it say that Moses, is that in the beginning of Ethics of the Fathers, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai u'mesara liYoshua. Moses received the Torah from Sinai. Why doesn't it say he got it from God? Okay, and he goes, I don't want to go deeper into what he said because that's really Kabbalistic, a lot of Kabbalistic terminology that most of you do not understand. But he said we have to understand that what Moses received was so lofty. He received a message that is so pure, so much light, so much divinity, and to bring it down to this physical world, you need a chain of deliverance, which means it's like when we understand how the tree of life is structured, and we realize that yes, the creator himself is outside, in a way, his creation. He's around his creation. However, his bliss is filtering into creation, sifting through the through the sefirot, through the olamot. Olam means in Hebrew a world, but it means also concealment. So that divine endless light is funneling through, and that's basically what the Mishnah is talking to us about, that Moses could not give us the message straight. It had to go through different curtains, there was a cascade of bringing down the message, which means we, people who live in the mundane physical reality, we cannot receive that infinite message because it will either burn us out or will explode with so much high power, like high voltage of the main power station to a small little home device. It's impossible. It has to go through transformers. However, we have to remember that the same initial light force of the Creator is infiltrating through all of these levels, and it lives, shines through everything in this physical reality, which means what sustains us is that ongoing infiltration, illumination through all of those levels. We live not just from vitamins and carbohydrates and proteins and fats and all kinds of other stuff that can give life to our body, but if there's no soul inside the body that receive that light from above, there's no life. And we have to understand that. So the more, let's go back to scientific discoveries of the last decades, the more a person trains himself to reach to that place of divinity, to that place of prophecy, to that place of connecting to the light which is outside the box, the more the person has the ability to achieve a level of awakeness, alert, awareness, life inside his brain that can be physically be measured, right? And more than that, you can achieve a state of mindfulness, awareness, inner peace, fulfillment that basically shuts down the noise of, this physical world. When we are encaged in the box, in the physical senses, then we're being irritated. Somebody said something, somebody didn't say something, something acknowledged us or did not. The food was tasty, the food was not tasty. We have so many things that put us into stress. It's almost impossible for most people not to be irritated all the time. And the reason for that is when your being, your inner soul is empty and void and hungry, everything upsets you. But when you achieve that level of not just mindfulness, mindfulness is a step, a level of epiphany, of spiritual enlightenment, of prophetic existence that projects to every aspect of your life. And when things happen, and things in this physical world do happen, many times not according to our expectations. And it's normal to be disappointed. It's normal to be somehow in alert because this is threatening. However, that again, scientific research, the more we activate those parts of the brain that basically are responsible for that state of mind of prophetic existence, of connecting to the divinity, the endless light of the Creator that is filtering through all the levels, all the olamot, all the transformers into our reality. When we are aware to it, and we connect to it, this is basically what we call having a quality of life. What does it mean? When we're talking about first Abraham, where it says that when he left this world, he was old and satiated. That's Genesis. Old and satiated, which means reaching a level in which you are satiated, and it's not food, and it's not drinks, and it's not alcohol, and it's not treasures. It is connecting to that spiritual light that is infiltrating through the tree of life into every aspect of our lives. And as long as we train ourselves to tap into it in different levels, that level of awareness, alert, and focusing on the 8th level, the 8th day, this is the foundation of living a human, fulfilled, complete life. However, the story continues in chapter 10. We have a very unfortunate event. ויקחו בני אהרון נדב ואביהו איש מחתתו ויתנו בהן אש וישימו עליה קטורת. And the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, took each a tray, and they put in their trays fire, charcoals. They put incense on it, and they brought it as an offering in front of God. Esh zara, a foreign fire, another fire. Asher lo tziva otam. They were not ordered to do that. It was not their job. They did it because they felt so high. They felt so free. They felt so much oneness with the greater one, and they wanted more. And so they ran into the tabernacle with the incense to bring it an offering. And the result, verse 2, chapter 10, ותצא אש מלפני אדוני ותאכל אותם וימותו לפני אדוני. And fire came from in front of God and consumed them, and they died in front of God. Okay, so what happened over here? What is the message for us? The Zohar is saying something, amazing, beautiful words. Verse 35 in the Parashat Shemini of Hasulam commentary. ובאור יומי ישתלימו עילאים ותתאים, וישתכח שלמה וחולה. בחדוותה דלעילה ותתה, ואלמלא תשתכח ערבוביה דבני אהרון באור יומה, מן יומה, ויסלקו ישראל מן ימה, לה ישתכח חדוותה דלעי ותתאי כהוא יומה. באור יומה יתברו חובה מן עלמה, וישתכחו כהנה, וישראל מדכאן מיני. באור יומה יתברו כל עינון מקטרגין דלעילה, והבו אזלין ושתן, בסחרניו בישראל, ולא ישתכחו באור עידנה. Translation. And on that day, the 8th day, the first day of Nisan, the year after the Exodus, on that day, the above and below have been completed by the actions of the Israelites, by, as we studied in Parashat Pekudei, in Parashat Vayikra, in Parashat Tzab, by doing the physical actions. However, those actions were consciously connected by just the consciousness and by the words that we're talking about when they were doing it, whatever they did. That was in order to create a way to connect, as we said, to the greater one, to the oneness of the universe. Then that completed the upper Sefirot and the lower Sefirot. And everything became totally shalem, complete. The word shalom is coming from the word shalem. Simcha lemala ulemata, there was happiness above and below. Why? Because everything was in harmony and in a flow. The light was flowing. And if there was not that disturbance of the sons of Aaron on that day would have become the happiest day since the splitting of the Red Sea. That day was so great happiness above and below. On that day, the sin of the calf has been removed, erased from the world. And the Kohanim, the priests, and Am Yisrael and the nation of Israel have been purified from the sin of the golden calf. On that day, all the dark forces that were created because of the golden calf have been removed totally. And they were not there anymore. So, but then when Nadav and Avihu brought that incense that we were not supposed to do, everything was shut down. They were killed, and the revelation came to a halt. Why? And so this is like the golden calf in the same magnitude. Or it is to give us a message. When we connect to epiphany, when we connect to enlightenment, when we connect to that feeling one, there is a mistake that a lot of people call themselves spiritual make, which means everything is allowed. If I'm connected to the one, to the oneness, then everything is okay. Everything, there are no limits anymore. Remember, yes, we can soar with our consciousness. We can fly with our spiritual wings above the realms of the logic. We can connect to intense light and power that energize us, and that can be seen when spiritual people really train professionally in meditation, mindfulness, or whatever. You can see that the brain's function is totally different. It's a different dimension. Okay? It's like, you know, some racing cars, they have this like regular when they drive to the racing track, but on the track they get turbo, and then suddenly it's like a totally different ball game. It's a different frequency. Our brain can do much more than that. It's jumping from regular computer to quantum computer. And then quantum computer, what does it mean? That whatever was impossible is right now possible. Whatever was not logic today, it doesn't matter. Still, you have to remember that you live in a physical body. And in the physical body, there are rules. And so you have to be with your soul's desire, will, connected to the heavens. And at the same time, remember that your body is down here on earth and there are rules. And you have to go by the rules. The sons of Aaron were not supposed to bring the offering. All the commentators are bringing a whole bunch of reasons why. Why bring in so many reasons? Just to give us the idea that there are rules. And you can't just, when people say, oh, I have the love of God, and that means he won't be upset about me. Yeah. Same thing, the power company, they love me as long as I pay the bills. But if I put my finger in the socket, I get electrocuted. That's a very unpleasant feeling. It feels like somebody is really upset. Whoever experienced like touching electricity, you got somebody really upset. Why are they upset about me? So that they're upset about you. We can understand that the human body and the electricity in the household, it doesn't matter if it's 110 or 220, they don't go together. These are rules. You can't change these rules. You know, human body is also using electricity, not this kind. Okay, this is the rule. Even if you're very, very spiritual and you eat garbage, that can have an effect over your body. So we have a great lesson over here. Yes, we human beings, we can achieve forgiveness for our mistakes. We can achieve epiphany. Even though we made terrible mistakes, we still magical creatures, and we're supposed to connect to the magic. And without connecting to the magic, our soul wilts day by day. A lot of people think, but I'm a good person. I'm going to the synagogue or to other house of worship. I do my prayers and so on and so forth. I obey, I follow the tradition. I follow the rules of my tradition. Yeah, these are the wheels. You know what happens to an airplane that never takes off? That airplane falls apart. They found out that airplanes that do not fly, they erosion is much faster than if they do fly. Amazing. Human souls, human bodies, they get eroded when they get, and the soul is like, I'm stuck here forever. No, I want out of here. When I don't see any hope. Why no hope? Everything is logic, logic, logic. You should, you can. This is possible, this is not possible. What about prophetic experience? Our brain is capable of doing that. Our soul is craving for that. So how do we do that? So we spoke about it in previous lectures. And so how do we get into the ability to experience to experience prophetic experience? So there are rules what you should follow. So first of all, we are being told that in our generation, especially reading the Zohar, even without understanding, in the original Aramaic, okay, and it's not very hard to study, to read, even Aramaic, because not like in English or some other languages, in Aramaic and in Hebrew, you read exactly the way it's written. So it's not very hard to learn the letters and to learn the vowels. Reading the Zohar has a very strong uplifting effect. That's one thing. Meditation, training yourself meditating daily, again, daily. When I started to study Kabbalah, I had no idea what does it mean. My brain was totally scientific, just thinking, just analysis. I had no idea what to expect. But luckily, I don't know why I had this when I started to learn meditation, Kabbalistic meditation. I started to train myself twice a day. It took me months till I started to feel, what are we talking about? That kind of uplifting experience in which, remember the first time I felt that like really powerfully, I was working in the laboratory in the university, but I was flying and I was saying to myself, I had an idea that the human brain is capable of these kinds of feelings. I never felt like this before. I was high for days, okay? And then I learned that it's something that is acquired. And now we know scientifically, especially at least the last 30 years, there's more and more research of people who are like meditating seriously of that human brain's ability. If you really want more about it, and the Zohar is speaking how to do that, and the Zohar is speaking about the 72 names. Let's see where. Okay, so the Zohar, Parashat Shemini, is saying that this is something that you have to exercise. And if you want to exercise about the 72 names of God, if you go to livekabbalah.org, to a main page, livekabbalah.org, and you just scroll down all the way to the bottom, you have some articles about meditation and some exercises you can do daily. They're very simple. It's not complicated. You're not going to see results. Most of you won't going to see results on the second time. It took me months. I see most of my students are much better than I am. They get high very easily. You know, it's easier today maybe than 40 years ago, but you should try. You should try to do like today. There's so many systems of mindfulness. You can find it on the internet. Exercise. You have the same way. No one is registered to the gym, paying membership, going once or twice, and then, wow, you look like $1 million. No, it's a daily routine that you have basically to rewire your muscles. That's fitness. But when we're talking about the brain is very flexible. And it also does the same thing. You have to build up your fitness, your brain fitness. And as I said before, many times, the research shows that the frontal lobe is getting thicker. All other parts of the brain are responsible for those emotions and feelings and experiences of loftiness and prophetic experience of really seeing the world from above the box, which means being there, realizing, yes, there's a box and I'm outside the box and I'm aware of both of them. This is something that you'll never feel accomplished. Anything. Doesn't matter how much money you're going to make. It doesn't matter how much, whatever you're going to achieve in our materialistic society, it will never be enough. And you're doomed if you're really materialistic. Because trying to get where you want only with the wheels, only with logic is impossible. You need wings. And those wings are the wings of the spirit. Those wings are the wings of spirituality. Those have to be achieved through very hard work. Same way, physical fitness is achieved by hard work. Okay? And another message. Most of the, the beginning of the Parashah Shemini, is dealing with the revelation of the 8th day, the dedication of the tabernacle, the results of the sin of the sons of Aaron, and then that it says very clearly, do not drink wine. Wine to the priests, to the Kohanim. Why? Wine can give you a false sense of high, but it doesn't get you to the right place. So do not, when you meditate, do not use chemicals. No, even light chemicals like cannabis or it takes you to the wrong door. And this door has, it's a nice door. In the beginning, it feels really nice, but it's a dead-end road. You want to reach very high. You want to experience the capacity. You cannot use alcohol. You cannot use cannabis. Okay? This is the wrong exit. And then there's another thing. On chapter 11, there's something else which looks like there's no connection whatsoever. And it says, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe ve'Aaron lemor alehem, and God speaks to Moses and Aaron, speaking to them. Dabur bnei Israel, talk to the children of Israel, and explain to them, Zot hachaya asher tochelu. This is the animal you're going to eat, and those are the animals you cannot eat. Why is this important? Okay, so the Zohar is explaining to us, in addition to what we just said before. You want epiphany? You want to reach outside the box. You want to reach the 8th dimension. You want to reach what is called the world to come, which is a bad translation. The Hebrew says Olam Haba, which means the world that is coming in present continuous, which means the other world is coming towards us all the time. The question is, do we welcome it by building inside ourselves the ability to lift up and to receive that experience? Because from the point of view of the giver, the creator, the giving is endless to all of us. And the giving is going sooner or later to be fulfilled. Remember, the creator is above time and is above space, which means his giving is unconditional. And sooner or later, all of us are going to find out that Olam Haba, that the world is coming. We are going through trials and tribulation in this physical world. So, and a lot of the pain and the misery and the suffering we're going through, especially nowadays, when you look around and you see the confusion politically, economically, social, everything is so messed up. This is the price of locking ourselves in a world that is so religiously materialistic, with such a, how would I say, denial of anything spiritual, which means creating a whole system, education, brainwashing children's minds, and grown-ups, and university. It's all about one thing. We're here to achieve materialistic goals only. Then nothing above it. And religion and God is out of the system. Never been so blatant like ours. And the result is the light must come in. The light must infiltrate in. And when that light is pushing, this light has a very destructive, painful result, because when something big wants to come to something small, and that something big is much more powerful, intensely much more powerful, then the something small starts to fall apart. And trying to create a system which says human life could be organized only with human logic. We don't need God. We don't need anything from the metaphysical dimension. Only human logic can solve all human problems. This is like never before, the denial of the Creator. Push that away. The power is so strong, it's right now pushing so strong that all what humanity created in the last few centuries, 2-3 centuries, humanism, democracy, justice, everything based just on human logic, and it's all falling apart just in front of our eyes. Why? Because it was created in a way that blocks the flow of God's bliss in. And it has to fall apart so we can be released from that Egypt of today. The whole planet became like this bondage, and be released. We have to let go of the logic of our society and recreate a new one, elevated one, a spiritual one that realizes that the human being is not a whole without the upper worlds. You cannot be a whole perfecting just a physical world. And therefore we see the levels of pain and misery and suffering and depression, despair, especially for people that figure it out and everything is beautiful and nice. You know, you live in a nice place, you have a nice salary, your own physical needs are being met. And why you're not happy? Because you are a magical creature and you have the need for that epiphany. And you need to change your state of mind. Then the pain will be eased. Why? When the light starts to come in, you don't feel the pain, you feel uplifted. And so chapter 11 is speaking about it, as the Zohar is saying. It's about kosher food and not kosher food. What's kosher? First of all, you have to understand In Hebrew, when you go to a gym, you say in simple Hebrew, I'm going for kosher. That's the word, kosher. Kosher means fitness, okay? So when somebody says, I'm going to do kosher, doesn't mean he's going to a kosher restaurant. It means he wants his body to get fit, okay? And that's very, that's very important. What's fit? And the Zohar says, Rabbi Shimon Amar, I'm reading verse 106 in the Sulam commentary. Klal HaKol, there's a great rule that includes everything. The same way that there are 10 sefirot of faith above, of the tree of life, there's also 10 sefirot of the dark side. Why? Free will. In order to have free will, you need that the holiness has the same power in this physical world as the dark side. Darkness, physicality, body, evil inclination, anything that is evil. They in order to have free will, they both have to have same powers. They can get one in front of another. So there are 10 sefirot also of the impure system. And they are holding next to each other. והם אחוזים זה בצד זה. והם אחוזים בצד האחד, והתיר לנו כתוב אותם בעלי חיים, נחזים בצד העשר ספירות הקדושה. And therefore, there are animals that are connected to the tree of life. That means that they are kosher, which means their frequency fits with the frequency of our souls. Yes, there's still a way to kosher them. You can't just eat an animal, because eating an animal, well, while it's still alive, this is the most cruel thing in the world. And more than that, eating the animal when it's still alive, you're just sucking in, because food has energy. If you know or not, everything we said is infiltrated by energy. The energy of animals is animalistic. When you eat the animal alive, when you eat the blood of the animal, in, some cultures in which they're very much into it. Why? Because they want to be strong as a panther. They want to be powerful as the bull. And that's why they eat blood. And that's why no, you don't want to be a bull. You don't want to be a panther. You want to be a magical creature that ascends to the upper levels. And you can't have that energy and soar to the heavens. So you cannot eat animals alive. You need to slaughter them in a way they don't feel the pain. And that's a kosher slaughtering only. You have to drain the blood, which is the animalistic spirit, out, because you cannot eat the blood, because that will get you an animal. You become what you eat. You have to cook the animal after all of this. So all of these rules are showing you there's epiphany. It's waiting for us, but you have to go by the rules. The sons of Aaron were the highest souls walked ever on earth. They thought, when you're high, you can do everything. No, you still have to follow the rules. Why? It's still part of the physical world. The human body lives under the physical rules. And you can't just drink gasoline, okay? Even if you're very spiritual. Why? This is part of our tikkun. On one hand, to soar like angels. On the other hand, remember that we have limitations and we have to keep the boundaries. So, wishing everybody a very uplifting, powerful week full of epiphany, so we can reach to the highest of all. Thank you so much. Secret, real, true, lasting fulfillment.